us now. Our pleasure to welcome in from CBS Sports, college football, basketball insider Dennis Dodd. Dennis, we just finished up the Big 12 spring meetings, heard a ton from Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark. And Jeremy and I were just discussing, did we learn anything new? Didn't feel like there was anything earth-shattering, but from your perspective, did you feel like you learned anything new or something that really caught your attention from Commissioner Yormark's words?
Well, I know, but behind the scenes, they were updated on the Colorado pursuit, the interest in Gonzaga and Connecticut both in basketball. They're going to launch, next year these marketing opportunities with Rucker Park and basketball exhibition games. They developed their own commercial sponsorship division for whatever that's worth. But yeah, there was a lot discussed in Greenbrier in West Virginia. By the way, Greenbrier has a bit of Western flair to it. It is a resort that goes back to the 1700s, the Revolutionary War, where if you go on a hike there, it's almost like Denver. You got a little oxygen problem. So it's a different look for the Big 12.
I'll have to ask my sister who lives in West Virginia about that. The Greenbrier is where they hung out, which is awesome. Okay, so regarding all of that information, do you feel like we're just waiting on the Pac-12 TV deal, and then if there are some disgruntled teams that perhaps want to leave, they go to the Big 12, and then these basketball-ish schools come into the conversation? Or what's the order, in your opinion, of events potentially here?
I think basketball is front burner right now because Big 12 runs the danger if they get too cozy with some of these talks with Pac-12 schools. They could be sued for torturous interference of an existing conference, and you can argue that that could happen in basketball as well. But I think Gonzaga's got options. I don't know if their buyout is that much in the West Coast. I do know that Connecticut has a significant buyout if they leave the Big East. Now, maybe that could be financed. It has been done before. But I think football, you just mentioned, I think they, like the Pac-12 members, are just waiting to see what the offer is. Not offer, but the contract that George Kliavkoff lands before there's any move. I don't think there's any move they can make until that comes about. And I do think that will come about. I just don't know exactly what it will look like.
The legalese of the day is torturous interference, which is the best phrase I've heard in my entire life. That's awesome. Do you feel like that could actually go down? Because it feels like perhaps that's happened in the past with other schools, but no one's actually done it, right?
Oh, it's what, that term? Yeah, that's been thrown around a lot, especially in the early days of this round of realignment, which sort of began in December of 2009, when then Big Ten Commissioner Jim Delaney sent out this cryptic note that said, we are basically open for business. And how about that? 14 years later, that's exactly what Brett Yormark said when he took office in August. And back then, the Big Ten quickly added Nebraska, followed by Missouri. By Nebraska, and Missouri, A&M, and Colorado went elsewhere as well. So yeah, I mean, I think they've got to tiptoe around that. There was a lot of legalese back then, a lot of negotiation for buyouts. But I think teams in this day and age have become more, I guess, cautious about that. I mean, I thought, look, in my story that I wrote last week about Colorado, I think the biggest takeaway was two things: that Rick George actually responded to my request for comment and said the same thing that he told, I think, buffzone.com, that Colorado, the big, is a proud Pac-12 member, but has to, look for its opportunities. I think that tells you a lot. And look, number two is that they are doing their due diligence. They are deciding between the Big 12 and Pac-12. And I do know for a fact that Dion is way down the line with this. He really supports it. Not saying it'll happen, but he supports the move because ostensibly it gets Colorado back into Texas and Florida in recruiting, which he loves, for rebuilding that program.
Longtime college football writer and insider Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports is on BYU Sports Nation. Do you think, straight up, that Colorado is the most likely front runner to start potential dominoes falling in another, I guess, edition of realignment?
Based on my reporting, I think Colorado and Arizona are the two most likely. Again, not saying it will happen because there's no certainty to it, because we don't know what the Pac-12 contract is going to be. But I think those two, I think philosophically, Brett Yormark thinks if he gets one, there'll be a domino effect. Whether there is or not is another subject, but I think if he gets one, that creates doubt in others. You go for the sure thing, which at least for the next 7 years is the Big 12 at that number, $31.7 million. It's written into the contract that any Power 5 that joins would get pro rata, which means the same as the other members. So, do you take that with a chance for growth maybe in the Big 12? They add basketball and maybe some more members with this, this marketing plan that Brent Yormark has to get into the Northeast Corridor. That's what UConn is all about. Already in New York with, as I mentioned, the exhibition games in basketball. I think there's a possibility there where they can play, create some sort of tournament at Madison Square Garden. Not the Big 12 tournament. They're committed to Kansas City on that. And build a coast-to-coast league. I mean, that's been his, his desire from the beginning.
If that's the case, I suppose they could just go out and get UConn and Gonzaga and you form this men's basketball powerhouse, which it already is. Is there something to what he's saying in terms of, hey, we could decouple our men's basketball rights in 2031 with ESPN and Fox, and we could sell this as another thing? It's not going to be football money, but is there something to this? Because it feels like he's on to something.
Well, there'd be more combined money for the league. Excuse me, I got low battery here. There'd be more combined money for the league. Now, there are those that disagree with his vision. He thinks that basketball in general is undervalued in the media landscape, that when streaming hits, there'll be a lot more demand for these college basketball games. And part of his dream is to separate football and basketball in separate contracts. The thing with that is it's not going to happen anytime soon. It's going to happen in 7 years when the current deal is up. You can't ask ESPN and Fox to reopen a deal you just signed with them to do that. That's not going to happen. To that point, then if Gonzaga joins, that money would have to come from within. Based on my reporting, it would have to come from existing Big 12 funds, whether that's each school giving up a piece to divide it, a 13th way, or money that they got from Texas and Oklahoma, as you guys remember in that buyout, that $100 million just sitting there, that goes to them. So then it just becomes a situation where what is Gonzaga's valuation as basketball only member of Big 12, and I'm kind of writing about that today.
Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports is on BYU Sports Nation. Dennis, you mentioned the substantive talks that the Big 12 and Colorado have been in, and then brought up, hey, it could get weird if the Pac-12 feels like there is interference, torturous interference. So how does the Big 12 stay out of trouble that way? Is it something that Rick George and Colorado have to push forward, and then the Big 12 talks to them when Colorado reaches out? How do they get around that?
Yeah, I'm no lawyer, but look, you can meet with anyone. It's up to bring up to their lawyers, the Pac-12 lawyers, to file suit. But you can meet with anyone about anything. Colorado has a media rights contract with the Pac-12 until July 1st, 2024. But they have to look out for their best interests. Brett Yormark's been pretty, out there saying, what the interest of the league is and what his interests are. So I'm not going to sit here and try to parse legalese, but I think that's one thing they have to watch out for, and so far they've done it.
I feel like the Pac-12 lawyers are busy with Comcast money and office space in San Francisco. They got a lot going on right now. Did want to ask you about the competition known as football in the Big 12. What do you feel like it's going to be in the last year of the Big 12 proper with Texas and Oklahoma?
Well, I think it's going to be fascinating. I think Texas is going to be favored, but there's an asterisk there and a caution. They've been favored in this league for multiple years since they last won their conference title in 2009 and went to the national championship game. So that's my word of caution. I have people asking me who I think will win the Big 12 this year with 14 teams. And I say, I can't pick Texas because they haven't fulfilled that promise. We've asked for years if Texas is back. Until they actually do it, I can't pick them. The issue is, what do you pick? I mean, this is a league going forward that has to not, runs the danger of becoming what the Pac-12 has become, in that there's so much parity, that everybody by November 1st has 2 losses. You don't want that to happen. Yes, there'll be more access in the expanded playoff, but that thing in general is definitely a negative. You've got to have 1 or 2 powers, in my opinion. And then the question becomes, without Texas and Oklahoma, who are those powers? Is it Kansas State, the defending champion, BYU, Oklahoma State? What about UCF and them coming in? Cincinnati's been to the playoff. And TCU just played for the national championship. So there's a lot of quality there. But I think you need 1 or 2 to really lead the way.
The word is parity for sure. Dennis, we appreciate your always valuable insights into a broad range of topics. BYU fans definitely want to cling on to basically anything you write. So for those listening and watching, how do they find more of your material right now?
Oh, it's really CBSSports.com. Our streaming service is free 24/7, CBS Sports HQ. And that thing goes live on CBS Sports Network from August Mountain Time, 1 to 4 every day. So I advise people to watch that as well.
Outstanding. When does your legalese book come out, by the way?
Yeah, don't worry about that. My law school education is severely lacking.
You're always very humble. Dennis, thanks for the time. Great to talk with you.
You bet. Thanks, guys.